have Councillor Yellens and Councillor Spettigue, who also wish to ask questions of Dan about planning and how the AONB fits into the West Devon planning sequence and how we do things. Okay, so I'm going to leave. So Patrick's going to take over.
Councillor Vashon, I think you have a question. Do you mind waiting until we do the two planning questions? Okay, so would Councillor Yelland like to ask the next question, please?
Thank you. Mine wasn't a planning question. It was just relating to what Mr. Cook was saying just now. And my question was really around thinking about the next generation, really, as to whether the AONB are working with the local schools, the Multi-Academy Trust, and the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme in with education going forward for the next generation.
The answer in short is yes. So, especially within the Tamara scheme, one of the particular projects of the 10 projects is a schools-based program. I think it is called River Explorers, which aims to connect schools with the river, raising awareness of river biodiversity benefits, river management, and especially water quality testing and active things that they can do, as well as the heritage. So that is a distinct programme under the Tamara Landscape Partnership, and DOV and such like. I don't think certainly in the 12 months I've been in post, we haven't had any direct contact, but there are opportunities for volunteering, as well as some of the active trails that could be obvious links that we could link into. So that's a very good idea that I'll take away. But schools programmes and education, dormice building, habitat building and habitat creation, for example, working, including in school grounds, is definitely part of the Tamara scheme.
Thank you.
And sorry, one last thing, if I may, Chair. We've also, part of that partnership Refresh and Rebuild that we mentioned last year, identified youth representation on our partnership itself as being a priority. So we are looking to see how youth and younger people can be best represented actively on the partnership to get them involved, give them governance opportunities and experience, as well as representing what young people want from living and working or being in education in and around the AONB.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spettigue.
Thank you, and thank you, Dan, for your presentation. It was excellent, really enlightening. I've just joined the DM&L committee, so this question really stems from your membership of that. So you mentioned the AONB as a consultee, but not a statutory one for planning. So can I ask, what triggers your involvement in a planning application, and what benchmarks do you use to assess I guess the nature of your, the tone of your response?
So we are a consultee, but not statutory at the moment. So it's as I understand it, we have a planning resource, although it's thin, as in we have a planning officer for the equivalent of 1 day a week as part of the AONB through our core funding. But then Ben Dancer, who is our planning officer, works the other 4 days for the World Heritage site. So knows the area and has worked with West Devon and St Cans. What triggers, so he does, part of the role he plays for us is monitoring all relevant developments within the AONB, and he does monitor for where he deems a response is sensible anyway. So we've got a very good system, we are monitoring it, and then he prioritises, and again that reports into our exec and our partnership with ultimately with our exec. He prioritises those developments that he thinks are either contentious or definitely contradictory to the local authority's duty to conserve and enhance the natural resources.
So you effectively have overwatch over the planning that goes on, and then you pick out the things you think need your involvement. Thank you.
Councillor Vashon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dan. Very comprehensive presentation, that. And I'm quite surprised how wide your remit is and how small your budget is. It's just one thing. It's rather related to the future and tourism. Obviously, you're going to encourage a lot of visitors to the area, and you're going to get a lot of visitors to the area. Is there a danger that might be? You might get too many visitors, and you might have get a certain amount of damage to the area, which you'll have to rectify in the future. And would that affect your planning at this stage?
We are actively aware of that as a potential risk. And we've had conversations with other partners, so not only other AONBs within our national association and within the Devon grouping, but also with Dartmoor, where that risk is probably more acute. Especially during lockdown, you'll be aware of people piling as soon as they were able to into areas which didn't have the infrastructure for those visitor numbers, and that has direct impacts. It hasn't happened. We kept a close eye on it. It hasn't happened within the Tamar Valley probably because our profile is lower than Dartmoor, and therefore people rush towards the national park. So thankfully, we don't think it's an issue. We are working closely with Visit Tamar Valley, as I've mentioned. So we will continue to monitor that risk and what infrastructure is suitable and what sort of visitor numbers we could attract. But I'm fairly realistic about the numbers, and we are being relatively conservative in our the targets that we're aiming for to bring extra visitors. So I'm not envisaging a deluge, and we will keep an eye on the infrastructure as we proceed with that.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Molyneux, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, if I could, thank you, Chair, or Vice Chair. Are you Chair now? You're Chair. It was in relation to the planning, back to what Councillor Spettigue said. So you said then about effectively your planning officer basically picks and chooses which applications you respond to. But if you're a statutory consultee, you'll have to respond to all planning applications. So therefore, what's the resource implication likely to be on you, and will you be able to effectively fulfil your duties as a statutory responder?
So as far as I understand it, and the government response only came out on Saturday, so we're still digging into the detail. There is a consultation that is part of the consultation as to whether we will be and should be. Well, they accept the recommendation we should be. It's whether we will be and what the mechanism and timing to make us a statutory consultee is. So that will be considered. The resourcing implications will be very clearly part of our feedback to that consultation, because we are having a planning officer for 1 day a week realistically means that he skims quite a lot, but he is very adept and very professional. So I don't think we're confident we don't miss anything at the moment, but you're right. It wouldn't cover a requirement to respond in more detail to each and every planning application that comes past him.
I do have another question that's completely unrelated, if it's all right. You mentioned about volunteering, and we've got on the Teams call, we've got Councillor Leach, who's responsible for wellbeing. Now, clearly the links between health and wellbeing and volunteering, there's an opportunity there. And I was just wondering whether you plug in to the NHS, the mental health services and the like of that. So I'm getting a nod from people.
Yeah, you're getting a nod from me because through you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, that the Tamar Valley does attend the Tavistock Health and Wellbeing Alliance, and they do a terrific amount, and they're starting to be really active, especially with the Tamara project. And I'd just like to thank you for releasing officers to do that. And that alliance has GPs and the clinical commissioning group, mental health. We were looking at it in great detail last week. So and I was very pleased to see your officer raise a point. So sorry to interject, but I do think that was germane to the conversation.
That's really good.
And just in addition to that, so I mentioned Tamara and the scheme, which is only just getting up and running with the volunteering programs and how we best make those links. Part of our volunteering program is to refocus and relaunch our walks programs, which are available for walking and talking, as well as walking for health. We're about to convene a meeting of all our walk leaders. And one of the early frustrations in our pre-Christmas meeting we had with them was their inability, or the low response they got when they were trying to make links with GP surgeries and social prescribing and that sort of thing. So we will be refocusing on that and seeing if we can formalise some of that, or certainly build it going forward. So the links are obvious. We want to do more in that area, and we have a little bit of, well, we have more than a little bit. We have a good officer and resource in place over the next couple of years to build on it.
Okay, so we have Councillor Kemp, followed by Councillor Daniel, and then Councillor Crozier.
Thank you. My question is really a follow-on from other people's questions about ascertaining whether some attitudes are built into the way that you approach. For example, I'm interested in wildlife corridors, and obviously that is part of perhaps something that should be in the planning that you are having. That is each time that a building doesn't have it, it's a missed opportunity. So how much is it kind of set in stone in the way that you're approaching your future development?
So
the main thing I've mentioned, our nature recovery plan, which is in development, should be out first half of this year. One of the things I'm building in, and I'm always looking to steal good ideas, the Blackdown Hills AONB used a really good graphic artist to produce a view of what a good connected environment, nature connected environment looks like, and that obviously very visually shows what a nature corridor is, what it looks like, and we will use that guidance, and again then we can use that principle to then build and enhance the links with both planners, habitat development, farmers, etc., etc. So wildlife corridors are very much part of the FIPL programme, for example, so trees and hedges and linking patches of woodland as well as different habitats. So there are active opportunities that we're pursuing where we can.
Thank you. And related to that, as a beekeeper, I'm very interested in the development of options for widening beekeeping or perhaps working more closely with agriculture and beekeeping. So obviously adding on to that is, well, what is your thoughts on that question?
My thoughts on that, I don't know enough about beekeeping to see what our opportunities could be, but I do know that under our recently revised logo, we have a bee as our emblem of the AONB, so that will act as a reminder of me to go and work it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for a really interesting and informative talk. So I just wanted to ask, our plan for West Devon has an aim to increase our biodiversity across the area by 10% in the next 3 years. And I was wondering where we could possibly work together to try and achieve that, because I think it would be really good, particularly as you've got Rob Sekula, who's also part of the natural environment group.
So again, I'll point you back towards the Developing Nature Recovery Plan, which we are obliged to produce or under the Colchester Declaration commitment that I mentioned from our National Association. That plan will lay out what the priority habitats are, what our priority species are, and then signpost what's already being done, but what we could do more of. So that will be the opportunity. Part of the government's response to Glover, they have re-emphasised their 30 by 30 link, which is 30% protected landscape and 30% improvement in various species and biodiversity. So that, along with our own nature recovery plan, should allow us to have discussions and say, right, these are the opportunities in West Devon. How do we raise resources and how do we work with landowners to improve those habitats? Because it all starts with the habitats.
Thank you. Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair. New Chair. I noticed the point when we were talking about planning just now about skimming approach. And I think this is an approach that has come in since COVID in many respects. There we are. It's all right, I wasn't on. The skimming approach has become apparent during this COVID lockdowns and what have you, because we're seeing planners asking for a lot more written reports from other experts rather than doing site visits and making an appreciation on the ground, so to speak. And I issue this as a warning in many respects that it is unfair on a lot of the people who are seeking planning permission, especially if businesses that have been held up by protracted, lengthy planning process. And I can certainly instance a couple of cases where we're talking about 8-9 months when it should be completed in 8 to 10 weeks. As far as bees, there's a very active beekeeper population within the AONB, and particularly on our side of the river. Thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Yeah, I don't think there are. I think I've got some instructions here which I don't fully understand. Would you like to explain them?
Thank you. New chair, I like that. So, Councillor Sellers, have you got your proposal to put forward?
Well, yes, and I think if you finesse it, that would be great.
I don't know whether I'm good enough.
Oh,
So can I just, we've taken advice from Darryl,
Yes.
the RC9, and he says it should be a proposal to council.
Oh, right, okay.
So if that's okay with you?
Yeah, and then that gives us time to finesse it, or do you want me to?
Well, we need to vote on it. It needs
right.
to be seconded and voted on by this committee, by those.
I believe Councillor Ewings will be seconded. No, she can't in the absence. She just said that she wanted to, but never mind. Right. Well, what I've put is basically that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommends that all future developments in West Devon must be landscaped with indigenous plants. West Devon declared both climate and biodiversity emergencies, and placing this condition would fit with West Devon's ambition to increase biodiversity. Oh, I don't know how. Is anybody better doing that?
Is it possible to add also?
Yeah.
Hedgehogs?
Yeah, biodiversity, or doesn't that fall under biodiversity, flora and fauna? I would have thought. Yeah, are you happy with that?
I'm just the concept of allowing through traffic of a hedgehog. You need to build it into the way that.
Oh right, yes. Okay, we can piggyback that on biodiversity and.
Could we talk about wildlife corridors or something?
And wildlife corridors. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I think I do fully support that. However, I guess there are some developments where maybe you don't do that. But I just imagine in town developments, you should have little passageways for hedgehogs and the like. So I don't want to complicate it, and I know that we've cracked on a great deal.
So, in terms of the next step would be for it to be seconded, then there'd be a debate, and then there'd be a vote.
Okay.
So that's the way I would suggest we go. The only thing, my only advice to you, could you just read out the first bit again, please?
The Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommend that all future developments in West Devon must be landscaped, or where landscaping is relevant, landscaped with indigenous plants. West Devon has declared both climate and biodiversity emergencies, and placing this condition would fit with our ambition to.
So my only concern is by using the word must, you are leaving no wiggle room whatsoever.
I know that was deliberate. That was actually deliberate.
Yeah, well, that's fine if that's what you want.
Because I know what it's like. They landscape it and then just put laurel and. It's just sterile. I don't know. Please put it. I forgot a second.
It's your proposal, so yeah.
All right. Again, we recommend the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommends that all future developments in West Devon should, or would, or must be landscaped with indigenous plants. West Devon has declared both climate and biodiversity emergencies, and placing this condition would fit with West Devon's ambition to increase biodiversity. Or safeguard as well, actually, increase and safeguard.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to second that?
Well, I would if there were hedgehogs.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So got a seconder.
So,
and now it's open for debate now, is it?
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Vachon.
Yeah, I'm afraid I do have concerns about the word must on that, and I think the word viable would be more preferable, and I'd be willing to go with it if it's a viable situation. I don't think we can actually tell people to actually landscape areas just like that without some sort of consultation and some sort of agreement. So I think it has to be a viable decision.
Okay. So this is getting complicated now, because presumably you have to agree to that and we have to second it again.
If that is an alternative proposal, or it's just part of the debate, it's up to Councillor Vashon now whether he proposes that as an amendment.
I would be happy to propose that as an amendment if Councillor Sellers would be willing.
Unfortunately, I'm quite reluctant to do that because I know what developers can be like, and and this is where it's unfortunate that there's this level of debate in here. I think actually it would be so much better in full council, because I feel very strongly that our landscape and our buildings and our developments, so many of them are pretty sterile. And unless we do, what is the point of being a councillor when we declare climate and biodiversity emergencies if we are going to have a sieve where perhaps developers can put non-indigenous plants? I'm a very reasonable person, and I get where you're coming from. However, this is where I'm desperate for some sound advice from, maybe Dan may be able to use your expertise if we're able to do that. I don't know what the protocol is, because I do feel very strongly about this.
Lucy Woods there, she's got a hand up. Come on, help me, Lucy.
Well, at the moment, can I just say, so if Councillor Vashon is proposing an amendment to your proposal, then that needs to be seconded. If there's no seconder, then we are back to the main proposal.
Mm.
So is there a seconder for Councillor Vashon's proposal?
Would you be happy just to reiterate what the amendment is?
Is that it's part of Councillor Sellers where she's saying that developers must put in proper indigenous biodiversity schemes, and I'm saying it should be if viable. I know it's weak.
So is there anybody wanting to second that? So back to the original. Yeah, and Councillor Wood would like to make a comment.
Hello, thank you, Councillor Kimber. So, yeah, thank you, Councillor Sellers, for putting that forward. I would wholeheartedly agree with your sentiment. And I think, just to sort of add to Claire's point, Councillor Kemp's point, is that, if we have more indigenous species of plants when we're doing this landscaping, then your hedgehogs are more likely to come back and have their corridors. I do think I think that must is a good word to have in there, and I think perhaps we should be able to be sort of fairly specific about what indigenous plants are, and to work with developers to ensure that they are putting in the right plants when they are landscaping. I think this is really important, actually, and really like this. So yeah, I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any debate? So we go to the vote. Yeah. So would you like to read it?
Thank you. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I take it that's it rather than me personally, we recommend that all future developments in West Devon must be landscaped with indigenous plants. That's basically it. West Devon has declared both climate and biodiversity emergencies, and placing these conditions would fit with our ambition. Would fit with our ambitions.
This is to be taken forward to council. Are
you happy with that, everyone?
I missed Councillor Yelland had put her hand up to speak.
Councillor Yelland, would you like to say something?
Thank you. Yes, just my only very slight concern is that anything like this, it needs to be reasonable and it needs to be enforceable. While I very much commend Councillor Sellis's proposal, I mean, I do know that planning officers are very keen that landscaping isn't done with laurel, it's done, you know, with indigenous species. But that's, I mean, I'm not on the committee, but I just wanted to sort of put in that anything that's going to impact on a planning decision, it does need to be reasonable first and foremost, but it does need to be enforceable, given that enforcement is discretionary. And I think that there does perhaps need to be the word new development in there. I'm not sure if the word new is in there. So if somebody purchases a property from a developer, it is a new house, but then obviously what they plant in their garden, I'm not sure that can be under the control of the council.
I take that point. I think that's reasonable. I did put all future development. Do you think that's a bit too woolly?
Well, can I suggest, because Councillor Yelland isn't on the committee, and we could be going round in circles all day here, that we vote on what you've proposed and then it goes to council to be debated?
Yeah, and it might be amended at council.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so would we like to, can we vote on this, please?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much, everybody.
Show of hands, please. This is voting for it.
Lucy can't vote. So it's 6-4.
Yeah, and anybody against?
Sorry, I'm trying to vote as well. I can't get my hand up.
Councillor Hayward, because you're not actually in the meeting as a physically in the meeting, your vote doesn't count anyway.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
So did we get the vote for, the number of votes for and against?
6 for and 1 against.
Yeah.
Abstentions.
Excuse me, did Councillor Daniels, did you vote?
I'm not allowed. I'm not.
Oh, you're not on the committee. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
And are there any abstentions? Okay, so that's carried, yeah?
Yeah.
So I think we've finished with that section. Thank you very much, Dan, for your time.
Thank you. It was more brilliant and positive results.
Sorry, Chairman, but my picture seems to have frozen. It's getting a bit boring looking at nobody moving or doing anything. I don't know whether I've pressed on something. Perhaps is Lucy's, has she got a decent
Yeah,
picture?
no, my picture's not moving either, Diana.
Oh, right, okay.
But it is fascinating meeting you guys.
Perhaps our technical people can look at that.
Yeah, perhaps you can contact the technical team or they can call you. Would that be all right?
I don't know whether, is there somebody in the room?
Yeah, my picture's moving.
There's lots of people in the room, but I don't think anybody's available to help.
Oh, right.
Would you like to call the IT team?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll leave and then clock in again and see if that does any good. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I think the next item is the draft budget proposal. Councillor Edmonds and Mrs. Buckle, is it?
No, Chair, it's Councillor Jory.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, in front of you is the draft budget proposal. This is a well understood position, and this is the latest incarnation of this document following immediately the local government settlement, which was recently announced. The features of the settlement include the fact that it is rather disappointingly a single year settlement only, but it does include a one-off services grant. It includes the fact that new homes bonus is being rolled over, and it continues with the lower tier services grant which was previously introduced. It also continues to set limits on council tax increases at 2% or £5. I'd just like to pick out, if I may, a few highlights of the further report.
The report itself now makes provision for a balanced budget for 22-23. This is subject to the financial pressures outlined in Appendix A, contributions to earmarked reserves of £209,000, the proposed use of £75,000 from business rates retention earmarked reserve as set out in paragraph 3.21, and the use of £150,000 of new homes bonus funding as set out in paragraph 3.3. The changes to the budget from the report submitted to the Hub Committee on the 7th of December are set out in paragraph 1.9. And I'd like you to note that they include making the rough sleeping outreach post permanent, which is something that I very much welcome, and increased IT support costs that have been identified. Members will also note that there continue to be future funding gaps in the medium-term financial strategy, largely due to a forecast negative revenue support grant for those periods. This negative revenue support grant is, of course, subject to the business rates review, and that in itself, the business rate baseline reset has been deferred till 23-24, which means that for the perspective of this particular report, there is no negative revenue support grant in 22-23. Alongside that reset, it has been proposed that the council remains within the Devon business rate pool at paragraph 3.23. And it should also be noted that we currently hold a business rates retention reserve of some £1.26 million, which can be partly used to smooth the volatility of income over the next 3 years, subject to that business rates reset. Members will also note that the question of staff pay has still not been resolved. The latest pay offer for the current year is 2.75% and still has not been accepted by the unions who are balloting their members on potential strike action. I'd also like to point out that the budget includes funding of £122,000 to deliver a plan for West Devon, as previously discussed. And it now also includes a contribution of £162,850 to a financial stability earmarked reserve, putting reserves in place to help deal with future medium-term financial strategy positions if needed. It also includes £172,000 of new homes bonus grant, which has been allocated to an affordable housing earmarked reserve as set out in paragraphs 3.3 to 3.31. I'd like to put in a word of caution here about next year's budget. There have been no reductions to income streams built into the budget at this stage, although it should be noted that revenue in car park income for the current year is expected to be some £69,000 down on budget, whilst interesting to note, planning income will be about £30,000 up. We obviously intend to monitor these positions closely over the coming year. Members will also note the capital budget programme of £835,000 as set out at Appendix A. The report recommendation seeks the views of members prior to the next steps for the budget, which are for Hub to recommend the final budget on the 1st of February to go forward to full council on the 15th of February. We, of course, will continue to look closely at the medium-term financial strategy and work on that through the Resources Advisory Group to resolve the projected shortfalls contained within these figures. Members, we have all worked really hard on this budget report, none more so than the officers involved, and I'd like to thank them and those who've been involved at every stage of the programme, and I'd be happy to take any questions on the report and to seek your views as outlined in the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Spetake?
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. I've got two questions, if you would. Just the first one, you mentioned the pay offer of 2.7% going to the unions. Is that part of an annual increase or is it triannual? Oh, I beg your pardon. There we go. Yeah, my question is just the 2.7% pay increase. Is that part of an annual increase or biannual, triannual?
Councillor, it's an annual negotiation of salary increases. This particular negotiation has been going on for some time. It is run through the Local Government Association as an employers' body. We all meet and put our views together and negotiate nationally with the unions. You'll probably recall that the union's claim, I think, for the current year was around 10%. The offer has been increased to 2.75 and it's still not resolved. So we're hoping that it will be resolved soon.
Thank you. And my other question, the business rate baseline reset, it's sort of self-explanatory, but are you able to expand a little bit on what it means, please?
I wonder whether I could call on Mrs. Buckle, if that's possible.
Yes, thank you. So the business rate baseline is something which happened when business rates got localised in 2013. So what used to happen before 2013 is in the finance settlement every year we used to get a set amount of business rate income and it was a set figure and we would get that business rate income irrespective of how much we'd grown our business rate base, how many appeals that we had against rateable value, how much we'd collected. And councils very much lobbied central government back in 2013 and said, we don't feel this is fair to not be able to influence one of our biggest income streams. So the government said, OK, we will localise business rate collection and localise business rates. So from 2013, we have had a business rate baseline set for us by the government, and that is due to be reset in 2023 and or 2022. We're not sure which year that's going to come in, but we think it will start from 1st of April 2023. But basically what that does is give a baseline, and anything that a council grows in terms of its business rate growth above that baseline, we get to keep an extra share of that. So it's a technical calculation, if you like, but it is informed by things like past performance, and obviously we are part of the Devon business rate pool. So we look at the baselines of all of the councils in that pool, which are the 8 Devon districts, Plymouth City Council, Torbay and Devon County Council. And we make sure that there is sufficient growth above all of our business rate baselines for it to be financially viable for us to be into a pool and to be advantageous. And that has been the case since 2013. We've been in the pool since then, and we've made good pooling gains every year. And as you can see, our pooling gains have grown. So now we're projecting about 200,000 for next year, which is a good rate of growth on our business rate base. But we are worried about the business rate reset when that comes in April 23, because we don't know what sort of baseline we're going to get set. Some councils have had a very challenging baseline set for them, and then that's made it very difficult for them to ever get a pooling gain above that baseline. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sellers.
Thank you. I apologise if this was in the information, but I haven't seen it. How is West Devon performing with its property investment portfolio? With what revenue are we getting on that?
Thank you, Councillor Sellers. No need to apologise. In summary, the portfolio I think is going extremely well, reflecting the work we did when we took the portfolio on. We've had no significant reduction in rental income. There were some cash flow situations that occurred, but they have all been resolved, aside from one relatively small dispute, I think, which is more about water ingress into a property that's being resolved than anything else. The income has therefore been maintained. It's making a significant contribution to our overall income and also building up reserves, as we've previously discussed. And interestingly, there has recently been a capital revaluation of particularly the property that we own in Bristol, which has resulted in a significant increase in the capital valuation of the property that we hold. So it is all, on the face of it, going very well.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Can I ask a question, please, about the on page 25? There's a net loss on car parking income predicted to be 69,000, and that's after claiming compensation. Does that mean the net loss would have been 69 plus 46?
Thank you, Mrs. Buckler. I can give you detail on that.
Yes, so we're predicting our car parking income to be down by 115,000 at the year end. So we've got budgeted car parking income target of just over 1.1 million. So yes, we were allowed to claim for the first quarter of 21-22, and we've claimed 46,000. So we're projecting to lose 115, but 46 of that we've been able to claim back from the government. So the impact on our bottom line as such is only the 69. So that is the net loss. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molyneux?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify the debate on the question around the pay award. So in the paper that's been put forward, it talks about 2.75 being the last pay award that was implemented in 2021. So at the moment, the employer's offer to the unions is 1.75%, and Mrs. Buckle has budgeted 2% in. That pay award is still going through negotiations at the moment. So at the moment, we have been as prudent and cautious in case that increases. But as far as I'm aware, it's the employer's final offer. So.
Thank you, Mr. Molyneux. I thought I was reasonably up to speed with that, but you have quite rightly put me right. Thank you.
Councillor Sellis.
Thank you. Can we have some more information about the possibility of a negative revenue support grant, please? The likelihood.
Thank you, Councillor. I think our information at the moment is that is likely. However, at this stage, I think we felt that for the last 2 years, we probably felt that it was likely, and it hasn't materialised. So we remain hopeful, but of course we plan for all eventualities, and we'll look at the worst possible situation until we know otherwise. So it still seems likely at some point, and what has really happened is that the reset has been pushed further back down the road. So.
May I have a supplement?
Yeah.
So are we in dialogue with our MPs?
Yes, of course, we continue to lobby, and we continue to lobby alongside the LGA on those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a question from Councillor Yelland.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just a quick question, really, around just looking at the pay review, considering that still hasn't been determined yet, and it's going to be back pay. Is that going to have an impact on our budget, the back pay, in terms of the extra national insurance contributions? They will fall liable on the back pay, won't they, as well as the current? Has that been taken into account in the budgeting? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So as long as that negotiation is concluded before the 31st of March, it won't be on the increased NI contributions. So as Mr. Munro has explained, it's currently been balloted on with the unions. We don't know when a negotiation will be settled, but if it does go further than the 31st of March, then obviously this is something that would impact on all councils nationally. So I'm sure there would be a solution to the increased NI contributions. So yes, I think at the moment we're not in the situation yet where it hasn't yet been concluded by the end of the financial year. But if that looked likely, then I'm sure there would be some sort of solution put in place for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. Councillor
Hello,
Wood.
sorry, yeah, just trying to get myself on. Thank you. So I haven't got my two screens open at the moment, but the money, I just wanted to ask about the money that's being earmarked or ring fenced for the affordable housing. Is that anything, you know, is that sort of to do with anything specific to do with affordable housing, or is it in a general pot for you know, whatever we need? I don't know if that's a very clear question, but I just wondered, I mean, we're having a lot of conversations, aren't we, about what exactly affordable housing is, and you know, what are how we define it, etc. And I just wonder if there's anything sort of particular around that pot that the money is ring fenced for.
Councillor Wood, I can answer that. There's nothing particular that it's ring fenced for at the moment. I think clearly we have an appreciation that there are great difficulties in that market right now. We are putting together a package of ways in which we can respond to that and hopefully improve the situation. And we thought it was opportune to put some resources aside to enable us to bring some of those things about as and when full council has the opportunity to debate them and decide what we will do. So it's really taking that opportunity of having the surplus to put it in a place where we think it's going to be useful at some point in the future, and I hope the very near future.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Drury.
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify something? I don't really understand what the council tax base is, how it's calculated, and why it needs to be approved by the senior leadership team. Perhaps you could help me with that.
Yes, thank you. So the council tax base is a mathematical calculation, and what it calculates is the number of properties that are chargeable to council tax, and it also calculates the tax base. So again, how many bandy chargeable properties or equivalent bandy chargeable properties is there for each individual parish. So it calculates the tax base for the borough, but also the individual tax bases for each individual parish, so that when they set their precept is divided by the number of their bandy equivalent properties, and that then gives their bandy council tax, which is charged for each individual parish. It is a formal calculation. In years gone by, we had to take that calculation to full council for approval, and then the government issued some regulations to say that that calculation could be delegated, and could be delegated. It's delegated in our constitution to the senior leadership team, and that was approved just before the end of December. So in terms of when we set the tax base, it is a legal deadline that we have to extract the information from our council tax database on the 30th of November. It has to be that date, done on that date, and then it takes us a couple of weeks to calculate what the tax base is. So we have to look at things like how many single person discount households are there in each individual parish. Other things such as council tax benefit have an impact, other discounts. So by the time we do that calculation, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. So it is just before Christmas that we write out to the towns and parishes, notifying each of them of their individual tax base. And in terms of the collection, we also, as part of that calculation, have to work out what council tax collection rate we are using. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That sounds very complicated.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? So we have the recommendations before us, and I've got some notes here. So the recommendations are: the ONS committee recommends the proposals of the report to the hub committee, and this will cover points 1 to 10 in Roman numerals. Good thing I learnt those in primary school. So can we have a proposer, please? I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder then, please? Very much, Councillor Spettigue. So can we vote on the... Debate. Oh, debate? Is there any debate? Thank you for your help. Debate? Is Councillor Sellers?
Yeah, I just think that all of us are finding that our finances are not going as far as possible, and we know that the revenue support grants are being reduced, etc. We must get the message out to our residents to explain that it's only 11% of the actual council tax bill that West Devon is charging as such. That's our slice of the pie, and that we do need to remain ambitious and creative in how we do generate some more income. It's just so sickening, actually, that we have to continually increase the income tax, the council tax, and people have the double whammy of the national insurance contributions going up. So I think we, as councillors, it's a pretty invidious position that we have to be in. So I hope that I trust that our council will get really strong message out to the residents.
Thank you very much. I agree with that. Is anyone, Councillor Vashon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to really commend the team, Mrs. Buckle and the team, for doing an excellent job on this, because it's not an easy task. It's extremely complicated, and I think the general public should take that on board. And I hope they do actually read some of this document, because an awful lot of work has gone into producing this, and it's very commendable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more debate? We go to the vote, I think. Can we show hands for the recommendations, please? Thank you. Anybody against? No.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Joy and Mrs. Buckle, for your time and input to that. So I think we have key performance indicators now. Who's introducing this report?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
The report in front of you today, members, provides an update on performance across the Council's key service areas for the period October to December 2021. Screenshots taken from the Pantana Performance Reporting System are attached to the report, with a brief narrative included for some of the service areas. Performance should be viewed against a backdrop of increased workloads due to COVID and ongoing work to implement additional processes and systems designed to improve service levels. Overall, despite these significant pressures, performance has been maintained to a good standard, and that, of course, is due to the hard work and commitment of officers across the two councils. The new COVID business grant is to be administered by the council and will require significant officer resource over the coming quarter. A contact centre review is currently being undertaken, with a draft report of findings due to be presented to SLT in the summer of this year. The planning service improvement plan has been implemented, and a performance update will be presented to Hub in April. A new performance reporting process, including new KPIs, is being developed based on the 8 thematic delivery plans which make up the plan for West Devon. Members will be able to access the new reporting process via dashboards from the summer. In the meantime, data will continue to be recorded in the Pantana online system, which members can log into at any time should they wish to view service performance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I have a question on page 54. I might be reading the figures wrongly, but it says the number of households where homelessness was prevented. But are we missing a chart to say how many cases of homelessness were not prevented, or am I missing the point?
Mr. Davis, have you got any?
Yeah, so this is so this is the number of actions that we take place as a council in order to prevent homeless. So we get more contact than this. This is the result of the cases where we're successful. So the housing crisis obviously that's been going on for a while has made it harder. There's less supply out there. It's more difficult to place troubled households and families into other accommodations. So those numbers have been under pressure for quite some time.
So the data is there showing us where we were unsuccessful, is it?
The data there is just the number of times we were successful. So yes, it is dropping, and it has been dropping for a while. So our success is lower than it has been in the past.
Am I missing the point? I mean, if we successfully home 20 people, but there's 100 people we didn't successfully find homes for, would we see that in this figure, in this data?
Right. You'd see that more in the use of temporary accommodation. So it's one of these stats similar to call stats where we get a drop off in call numbers and our performance seems to increase. So no, we don't, and we've never tracked or never reported to ONS the number of people that contacted us versus the number that were successful.
Councillor Sellers?
I agree with you, Chairman, and I think that this is something as elected members we're all concerned about, homelessness. And I've actually, I did email the leader and the lead for homes to see if we could have an update at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I wasn't going to say anything, but because you've just mentioned that, I'm asking questions like that too.
Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. So as we sort of realign the reporting cycles of the new corporate strategy, a plan for West Devon, then there's an update for the April Overview and Scrutiny Committee on homes and homelessness. And I think, and I'm looking at Councillor Jury here because I'm trying desperately to find the agenda that we're going to talk about at 4 o'clock. The next meeting as a report on the homelessness strategy coming to Hub Committee. So
yes, it does, Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you.
So it's probably better to ask the questions then. Yeah.
But it will be coming to Overview and Scrutiny in April. That's on the forward plan.
Any more questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the performance figures shown in the Pantana report. And proposer, Ms. Councillor Sellers, seconder, Councillor Spetacue. Is there any debate? I'd just like to make a few comments. I just thought it's very encouraging to see collections missed. We seem to be missing a lot less, which I thought was really good. And it's good to see the number of enforcement cases being closed, although it looks like the workload is still very heavy. And just on a personal note, I've had some very positive feedback from residents about phone calls and the contact centre. It's a while since I've had it. So the work programme.
Just a point of any questions from members of the committee for the future work programme. Like I say, we are trying to align the reporting cycles so that the updates that come through for the new corporate themes and strategy align with reports going to Hub and then the opportunity for scrutiny to review in a bit more detail the progress against those strategic themes and the actions undertaken against it. So we're in this transition cycle where at the moment we've sort of got the old way of reporting stuff and an old set of agenda items and a new plan to take this forward. But we're starting to move in the right direction there.
I did have a question about the Southwest Mutual Bank, which I think the council's invested in, and I don't know if that should go into the work programme or perhaps it's a question that could just be answered now.
Would like me to answer that now? Councillor Kimber?
Yes, please.
I'll do my best. I'll start by saying I attended the annual general meeting of the of the bank. And that was in August 21, which seems a very long time ago now. So forgive me if my memory fails me at any point. But the situation then, of course, was the COVID had affected the project quite significantly. And at that time, their staff were furloughed and their work to apply for a banking license had been put on hold. And they're also taking legal advice on the appropriate legal structure for the mutual bank. Now they're planning, or they were in August, planning to resubmit their application for a banking license to the FCA by March of this year. They're also looking for additional funding to make sure that the project can continue. The bank is properly capitalised. In terms of products, they were looking at a soft launch of unsecured lending and savings products, hopefully in spring 2024, a personal current account product in mid-2025 at the earliest. So that was the position in August 21. I think we can probably request a further update as time has now obviously moved on. So that was very much the position then. So obviously they were finding going quite tough. The project was pretty much on hold at that time, but they are still obviously committed to moving it forward, applying for a banking license. So we remain hopeful that they can get the appropriate funding that the project will move forward.
Thank you very much for the update. I think, so are there any more comments on the work programme?
Can I suggest then, Chair, that we have an update on there on the Southwest Mutual Bank for April, May?
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable with you?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
We will put that into the work programme.
Yeah, fine.
If that's all right, Councillor Edwards.
We'll obtain an update for that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So no other comments on the work programme? So were there any member learning and development opportunities arising from this meeting?
I think it's been an excellent opportunity for you to be chair.
New chair. Yeah, I was learning fast. Hopefully. I think we can close the meeting now. Thank you very much for attending. It was good to see you all.
Thank you, members. Thank you for those online.